Brian Cheung, as you know, Wednesday will bring the next FOMC decision in the Fed, thinking around what they're doing to kind of respond to this economic collapse here. Interesting projections from the CBO when we think about where the unemployment rate in this country might go. Of course, we've heard a lot of people on this show raising that it could get as bad as the high teens, perhaps 20%. But what is that thinking going to do when we get to this meeting on Wednesday?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The CBO, again, the Congressional Budget Office, with projections of their own, actually, just in the last hour, they said they expect real GDP to decline by 12% in the second quarter. That would be 40% annualized. Pretty harrowing numbers there, with the unemployment rate averaging close to 14% during the second quarter, which raises the question, what does the Federal Reserve do? Now, on one hand, you could argue they've already done whatever they think they needed to do because they expected to see these types of numbers in the first place. But you have to consider that usually in these pre-scheduled FOMC meetings, the only thing the Fed usually announces en masse is really what do they do on interest rates and what do they do on quantitative easing. And as you know, Zach, we're already at zero bound for interest rates, and quantitative easing has no limit right now. The Fed is buying as many asset-backed securities or agency mortgage-backed securities or treasuries as it wants. So the question is going to be, what else can the Fed announce? I think one thing that's worth watching is just the language that the Fed uses to describe what the economy looks like through their statement and then through Chairman Jay Powell's press conference, which is still going to happen at 2:30 on Wednesday. And then secondly, does the Fed announce anything further on its existing liquidity facilities? Keep in mind the Main Street Lending Program, which is supposed to target businesses larger than those that qualify for PPP. They haven't officially announced that yet. They've announced some details for what it might look like, but nothing finalized yet. So it's possible they can announce something there. But as far as the usual interest rate policy that we watch, not much to be expected on Wednesday.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, on that front, I mean, when we think about it, if history is any indication, we've been seeing that come out even before we actually get to the FOMC decisions anyways, because we got emergency cuts nonstop, basically. That's been the trend. We heard from Raphael Bostic saying that he was kind of tired of not having his Sundays free because they've had to put these decisions out. He told us that. But I mean, when we look at it, I guess inflation worries aren't really even there at this point either. When we think about the 2% target that they've set, running so far below that's not really even one of the things that they're watching right now.
No, not at all. And that was the story when the Federal Reserve was raising interest rates later into the recovery, which is now basically over with the deep recession that we're likely going to be in as a result of COVID-19. But the Federal Reserve is not focused at all on inflation. When you consider the fact that the Fed balance sheet has ballooned as the federal deficit obviously has increased, there obviously are some concerns, like in the 70s, about whether or not this type of fiscal spending would increase inflation and maybe spur inflation when everyone comes back online at some point. But we have to keep in mind, people were saying the same thing after the stimulus that was injected after 2008. And we never really saw inflation after that point in time. Inflation, in fact, was always kind of hovering below the Federal Reserve's 2% target. So it seems like the regime that we're operating in, the economic environment that we operate in, is different. And I think for that reason, the Federal Reserve and Jay Powell are saying we're not really concerned about it for right now.
Yeah, and we'll see what updates they give come Wednesday. But Brian Cheung, thank you so much.
Hey investors, Zack Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.